In this driving lesson video, I'm going to share with you some of the more stranger things that learner drivers have gotten up to on their driving tests, based on emails I've received over the last couple of years. Now, very often, this weird behaviour that I'm about to discuss with you comes down to certain misconceptions about the test, as well as a lack of knowledge and experience. But whatever the reason, I'm going to share this information with you so that hopefully you don't make the same mistakes that they did. So let's get on with it. So the first area I'm going to talk about here is where I've been told in the emails by certain learners that they are getting excessive blind spot checks in situations like this, where the red car, blue car, yellow cars, like at junctions and roundabouts. There is absolutely no need to be checking your blind spot in this area here, as I'll get on to in a minute. But you would check your blind spot if you're moving off from a parked position, for example. Like, let's say you're doing a hill start, and you would get a quick sideway glance if you're changing lanes, especially if that change of lanes involves a large movement and if it's busy. But it would only be a sideway glance. It wouldn't be a full look around when you're observing changing lanes. But at standard junctions like this, and roundabouts as well, there is no need to be checking the blind spot or your shoulders before you complete a turn, or if you are in the middle of your turn. This is completely unnecessary. You have to keep your eyes on what's ahead of you, not what's behind you. So if you're the red car here, for example, and you've checked your mirrors and you've indicated, and somewhere around about this area here, give or take this area here, you decide, for whatever reason, to check your left shoulder or your right shoulder, that means then that if you do that around about here, you are momentarily taking your eyes off the road. So if a pedestrian crosses here, or a cyclist suddenly cuts across here to overtake and come out like this, as they do, because cyclists are not always the brightest sparks, then you are going to be temporarily blinded because you, in your wisdom, and for some bizarre reason, have decided to look behind you when you're about to take a junction here. And the same goes for the blue car here. If the blue car is taking, let's say, a right turn, for example, and just before he pulls off, then he decides, for whatever weird reason, to look behind him, or either over the left shoulder or right shoulder, God forbid both, and then he decides to take his turn. Then that time that he spent looking behind him then is time wasted and time lost, because there could easily be another car or a cyclist or something coming here, and he pulls out then, and all of a sudden there's a car here, and it's not exactly ideal. And the same goes for the yellow car, and if you're at a roundabout, and also if you're overtaking a line of parked cars. If it's just a standard line of parked cars, just check the mirrors, indicate, maybe double check the mirrors on the way down, but there's no need to be checking blind spots if you're overtaking a regular set of parked cars, just like the ones you'd see in a housing estate, for example. Some learners have said that they were told to do this by their driving school, by their driving instructor, which I find bizarre and worrying. Now, that's only happened a few times, I believe, in my emails. I'm not saying all driving schools are encouraging this weird behaviour, but I would find it worrying nonetheless. Other learner drivers have said they were trying to be extra cautious and extra observant by doing this. But trust me, there's no brownie points for this weird behaviour. It's going to look impractical, it's going to look unnatural, and quite frankly, it's going to look a bit desperate. The next unusual and undesirable behaviour that certain learners engage in is driving too slow on a good straight road in order to try and impress the tester and to show the tester that they are somehow extra careful and extra cautious by going 15 or 20 kilometres below the speed limit, for example. This is not how you impress the tester, and it's not how you drive in a practical and a realistic way. I have seen quite a few instances of learner drivers driving too slow and losing marks. And in my experience, this comes down to cultural reasons, because a large cohort of people from certain countries seem to think that this behaviour is going to get them some kind of brownie points. For example, I often get emails from people who may originally be from the likes of India, Pakistan, Bangladesh and Sri Lanka, as well as East Africa as well. And some, but not all, seem to think that by driving extra slow, it's going to make them a better and safer driver in the eyes of the tester. Now, driving too slow or being too hesitant at junctions and roundabouts is certainly not unique to people from the Indian subcontinent or Africa. But if you are originally from these regions, then please do not take it upon yourself to drive 15 or 20 kilometers below the speed limit on a good, safe road. Driving in such a way does not show the examiner that you're a careful driver, but instead it shows that you would rather insult their intelligence and drive like a moron instead of driving in a practical and a realistic way. If you randomly apply such a ridiculous philosophy, then it will cost you marks. You need to judge each road individually. So, on tighter streets like this, with parked cars and it's clearly not that wide, then certainly drive slower and be careful. But on more open roads with good visibility, then aim to reach the speed limit as long as it's safe to do so. In a similar way, I read a lot of emails over the last number of months and years where learner drivers are getting marked for driving either too fast or too slow over speed bumps. Now, usually it's driving too slow. Generally, if you're coming to a standard speed bump, you should slow down gradually, get down to about 25 or maybe 20 kilometers and go over the bump in second gear. Okay, now there are going to be exceptions, of course, but that's generally what you would do. There is absolutely no need to be slowing right down to walking pace, going into first gear and crawling over the ramp. That is not the way to do it. And you need to judge each bump individually. So as I said, for standard ramps, slow down to approximately 20-25 kilometers and do it in second gear. There will always be exceptions, of course, and that's why you need to look ahead and read the road ahead. And on that, watch out for speed bumps that have the yellow shark's teeth, like this. To the best of my knowledge, there is nothing officially different between the ramps with the white teeth compared to the ones with the yellow markings, like this. But in my experience, whenever I encounter a speed bump with the yellow markings, it often tends to be a bit steeper and more bumpy than the standard ramps with the white shark's teeth. So that's something to be aware of. But for a normal speed bump, don't slow down excessively. Don't crawl over it at walking or crawling pace. Just be practical and be realistic. Because if you don't, you may find yourself losing marks on reaction to hazards. Very often the examiner will mark this under this area, reaction to hazards, because you haven't reacted to the hazard, that is the ramp, in a practical or a realistic way, as I've said. So I hope you're going to find these tips useful. Remember, it's all about judging each situation, each road individually. Do not get into the habit of applying a random rule and applying it across a broad area, because in driving you have to judge each situation individually based on the conditions that you see in front of you. So if you have any questions and you'd like me to analyse your report sheet, then send me an email, danetyghe@gmail.com. Don't forget to give it a thumbs up if you enjoyed it, and I'll see you soon. Slán go fóill.